All right. So, we are at chapter 5. So we've introduced the two souls. We've talked about what our natural soul is like and what its motivation is. And we talked about our godly soul and introduced where it comes from and how it comes from a piece of Hashem. It is the essence of God within us. And we talked about its 10 faculties, the different soul personalities that it has. And last week we talked about how the soul expresses itself and relates to the world around us. Especially, and then we introduced this amazing availability of connecting to Hashem through the mitzvot, which are garments that aren't regular expressions like a regular action or talking about anything else, but it actually is the ability to connect with God, being that God, those actions of the mitzvot are God's will. So it's like a bridge. It's Hashem extending an ask of us. He asks of us to do an action. That's his will. He says, I want you to do this.
I was going to ask for a piece of paper.
Sure.
Sorry.
And he asks us for a favor. And with that favor, he's giving us the opportunity to then express ourselves through that action and then connect. And that the will of Hashem is his infinity. So it makes the action transcendent. So that was last week's teaching. This week's class takes the same idea, but we're going to talk about a special mitzvah that is more than just an action. It has an additional level of connection with Hashem, and that is the Torah. So Torah is one of the 613 mitzvot. It is the mitzvah to study Torah. But in addition to that, it is a different type of action of knowledge and thinking and internalizing. And here I said it. So my question to you is, when we're engaging in the act of thinking of an idea, of studying, what is true? Are we wrapped in the study, or are we encircling the idea? So let me backtrack for a minute. Let's talk about that internalization. When we study, we are doing an action. It is an action. But the action is an internalizing action. Whereas if we give tzedakah, we take our hand, we put a coin in a pushka, nothing is happening inside of us. It is an external action. Or if we are even going to say the words of prayer, then it is coming out. It's that connection with Hashem that exists kind of between us and Hashem. But when we study, what we're doing is internalizing. We are taking an idea and cogitating it, ingesting it. We digest an idea. When we're thinking of a thought, we say, wait a minute, let me just digest that thought, right? What is happening? We are eating it. And that is why the Torah is actually compared to soul food. King David, on the very last page of our handout, it quotes from King David where it says, verse of Psalms, it's the third line, and it says, your Torah is in my inner parts. B'toratcha b'toch me'ai. It's in my innards. Me'ai is like inside of me. So Torah is compared to food. So if we're wondering how we express the soul, then that is the soul's actions. What we talked about last week, the garments, the speech, the action, the thinking. But when we want to know how do we feed our soul, that's Torah. So let's get philosophical for a minute. And I'm going to come back to that question I asked before. So we have this idea that we have the Torah is when we think of an idea, we ingest it. And just like food becomes part of our bodies, right? We eat the food and then it gets broken down to the point where it becomes part of our cells. The same thing with Torah. When we study the Torah, it becomes within us and it integrates within our souls so much that it becomes part of our soul, and it's literally feeding our soul the godliness that it craves, the connection to God that it craves. It becomes one. It gives it the sustenance, the energy, right? So let's get philosophical. Based on that, it would be like the visualization of ourselves surrounding the thought, because the thought is within us. That is called in Kabbalah the Or Pnimi, the internalizing light. In Kabbalah, in the Zohar, back in the mystics of Tzfat, the city of Tzfat, this is what they were teaching and talking about. The light of the Pnimi, the divine light that is like it's visualized as like a line, because it goes straight to inside of us to be internalized, appreciated. Remember we talked about the dot? The dot is like a pnimi type of thing. When we're able to, that was the third, chapter 3, when we were able to take an idea and actually, I will talk about that for a minute. So we talked about the 3 parts of intellect. The chachma, the flash of inspiration, the bina, the cogitation, the understanding, the details, and then the dot. So the chachma is that action part of Torah. It's the part of Torah where your mind latches onto an idea. It's still not within us. It's like, ooh, I just had a thought. My thought landed on something. And then the second part, the feminine part, is the bina, where we take that idea and we brainstorm it, we expand it with breadth. And that is the idea of the Torah being also within us. We're really under comprehension in the Bloom's taxonomy, right? There's knowledge and then there's comprehension. Do I understand it? Does it make sense? Do I understand the details of it? Can I explain it? And then comes the da'at, the knowledge. That knowledge is true internalization and integration, where it becomes so true to us that we can't unknow it. And that's where it's really fused with us. You can't uneat, right? It's there. It's part of our cells already. And so when we really know a thought, we really know a knowledge, you can't unknow it. Sometimes you want to unknow something, right? But with the Torah, it's a good thing that it's always there. And even if we forgot it, it's still inside of us. And that is that dot, that fusing. That's when the idea is not outside of us, it's inside of us. So we contain the idea. That is the uniqueness of the Torah that sets it apart from the mitzvot. So right now, it's kind of like, it depends what the perspective that you look at it. So this chapter is all about the advantage of Torah. But make no mistake, there is an advantage of mitzvot. So it's like, depending on how you look at it, Torah is amazing because we can internalize it and it becomes part of us. And mitzvot are amazing because it takes us outside of ourselves. So that's where Torah is called equal to all the other mitzvot. I think it's going to be in here, but it may not be. I didn't check. Where's
in the morning of brachot?
Yes,
Yeah,
Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Exactly. Thank you. And that's exactly what we're going with this. That the Torah study is equal to all the other mitzvot, and not because internalizing is better, but because it's both. It's internalizing and it's action. The action of a mitzvah is when you're in the process of learning something new and trying to understand something. A lot of times we say that we're consumed with thought, or we're consumed by an idea, or we're lost in thought. The thought surrounds us. So it's both. The thought surrounds us as we're making sense of it, as we're interacting with it. We're lost in thought. We're consumed by an idea. And then once we get to a point where we really start to understand it, and then we start to internalize it and make it relevant and connect it to ourselves, it becomes inside of us, and then we own the thought. We've what's another word for internalize? I keep using that word. Maybe integrate. Maybe another word you can help me out with. When we've assimilated, maybe.
And it becomes union. There is a union. It's a Hashem
yes,
union.
and
Achad, right?
thank you. And that is exactly what the Tanya says next. That is amazing unity. Oh, how you could. There's this amazing unity that would be great. That can only happen with Torah. Again, we're talking about advantages. So there's like the advantage of mitzvot, advantage of Torah. But the advantage of Torah is that there's this amazing unity that happens. And last week, we mentioned a verse from, I think it's the Kabbalah from Patach Eliyahu, which is part of the Zohar, that our soul, lest our intellect grasp God. And it's going to find it for us. Deis machshavatris klal. I think it's on the first page. Yeah. So it's right in the middle. Where it says, he then actually, so right in the middle of the page, he then actually comprehends and grasps the will and wisdom of God, whom no thought can grasp. So we talked about this last week a little bit, and we will talk about it again and again and again, because what the practice that we're doing with the study of Tanya and with our life's mission is basically aiming for the impossible. We are contradictory existences. Hashem is this infinite light that does not have an end. And I talked about that, like when you try to think about it, you fully freak yourself out. Like, it's just not understandable, because Hashem, we are his creations, and we are limited. Our minds are limited. We are not infinite or unlimited. We're not magical or superpower. Like, we're natural human beings. And our brains cannot physically, naturally comprehend infinity. It doesn't fit in our brain. Yet God is infinite. And yet God says, know me. He commands us to try and know him. So we are setting out to do the impossible. But the fact is, he's not knowable, as it says in the Zohar, whom no thought can grasp. No thought can grasp. But yet, rigged in the system is this like loophole where God says, okay, you can't really naturally grasp me, but I'm going to do something magical, and I'm going to put my wisdom, and we talked about last week that God is different than our thought process, where it's very important for us to differentiate our thought process from the thoughts themselves. We need to sometimes be able to watch our thoughts and let them flow by. We don't necessarily want to identify ourselves with our thoughts because they are not necessarily helpful. They don't necessarily reflect reality or facts. So we need to differentiate ourselves from our thoughts. There's me, there's my thoughts, and there's that which I'm thinking about. But with Hashem, and I'm sorry, please stop me if I'm going on, like if we need to stop and talk about something before I just keep going. But with Hashem, he is his thoughts. And he is what he's thinking about. He's one with that. Because remember, he's this infinite energy. There isn't definition and differentiation between parts of Hashem. He doesn't have a hand and a nose like we do. He's just Hashem. So he is his thoughts. He is the thinking process. So he is the Torah. So when we think about and try to understand and then ingest and digest Torah, we are digesting infinity. We are uniting with the infinite, which is mind-boggling. So let's stop and talk about that. Anybody have anything to share? Thoughts that are coming to your head or questions? Oh,
I just want to say that today I don't know why, it just came into this crazy head of mine, that woman, in order to say the word, because so much of learning Torah is an action.
mm-hmm.
Yes, that doesn't mean it doesn't involve our intellect or our speech, but we have to speak it. We have to discuss it. We have to learn it. Even when we're laning, we say it out loud.
I feel like the Alter Rebbe is like whispering in your ear because that's how he ends.
Oh,
It's amazing. No, you're really
but,
like.
So I was saying woman, and maybe it's just like all the crazy yoga I do, but I think that you have to, when you say man, it's a statement. You don't really need a lot of breath. But woman, there's a breath. There's a place to expand, to try, like a bina, to understand that you can understand the female, the feminine part of that part of knowledge.
So it's like that chachma and bina.
Exactly. And then, but yet it still has the container, the union that Dot offers. And it's only with learning Torah, and it's so generous, it's beyond generous that Hashem gives us this Torah, but we can learn it, we can approach it through a Tanya class, we can approach it through the 5 books of Moses, all of the Tanakh, or we could learn it or we can learn it orally in our studying oral law, where you have to cogitate it and go back and forth, and that's why in many instances you do it with a chavrusa, with another or a team of others, where you can, and because with this union of light is so infinite, you can, for me, in my limitation, I can only catch little epiphanies, you know? And but I think that we as women have a real leg up here, because we are just like the way we are, whether we have children or we don't have children. We have the capacity to do that. You know, we are a container for this incredible gift that Hashem has given us.
And thank you. And I think that's going to become more and more apparent as we continue throughout the chapters. We're going to continue to see how incredible the idea of malchut, which is sovereignty, which is the epitome of femininity, is. And that's when God created the world. It's the feminine aspect that does that. That's the malchut, the sovereignty. That's his relationship with us. So we'll go on, and we'll keep that theme will keep coming up. Thank you for bringing that in. And another thing that you've touched on, which is how the Rebbe concludes this idea, is he brings it full circle. So he says, first of all, there is a prerequisite. In order to fully experience the unity of the study of Torah, we need to do it with something called lishma. Lishma means literally for his name, but the idea of lishma, which can be, there's many things of what lishma means, but in this case, lishma means for the purpose of connecting. So literally it means his name. And if I find it, that would be great. For some reason, it is a challenge for me to find the words in this format. First of all, on the second page, it says I found where it says that the Torah study is equal to all other mitzvot. So I found that one, and it's actually not the second page; it's the last page. So, excuse me, there. It's the very end of the last page where it says the Torah is equal to all the mitzvot. And if I find where it says lishma, I'll point it out. But in the meantime, also the last page? Thank you.
From the bottom.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, there it is. Thank you so much. So, the meaning of the Torah for its own sake is study with the intent of binding one's soul to God by comprehending the Torah. So, lishma is it's that prerequisite, and it's an attitude. So one can study Torah with the attitude of like, a great intellectual exercise, or if you're studying, there's many aspects of Torah. You can be studying the legal part of Torah because you want to win a case legally. You can study the Torah because it makes you feel important. That was a very big prevalent attitude in the times of the Baal Shem Tov, who started the Hasidic movement. It was actually one of the problems was that the Torah scholars were getting all full of themselves. They were very pleased with themselves that they had so much knowledge, and that was the byproduct of that was shunning the simple people. And that's why the Baal Shem Tov came around and said, "This isn't about you. This is about God. And if it's about God, then you are no better than a simple person." And then the Alter Rebbe takes that to the next level. If the Torah study is about connecting with God, and that's for the purpose of Lishma, for the purpose of His name, then it doesn't matter how smart you are. Everybody can access the Torah on his intellectual level. A child, an adult, a scholar, somebody who is more musical, somebody who is more mathematical, everybody can access the Torah and with their unique brain. And when that person accesses and works with the Torah for the purpose of connecting to God in their way, then what's happening is this amazing unity of this internalization and this assimilation of Torah within the self. Now, we're going to take that idea and we're going to bring it full circle around to the mitzvot, because Torah, again, is a mitzvah. And like Susan was saying, Torah is an action. Studying Torah, it's still an act. Study is a verb. It's an action word. So it's not only internalization, it's also God's will. It's also a garment. And we connect with that aspect of it being a garment when we speak it. And that's what Susan was saying. When we speak the words, you have to also say it. So when we think Torah, we're internalizing it. But when we think it and say it, we're internalizing it, but also making it a garment around us. And we are connecting to God in the form of His will. And I'm going to get Kabbalistic for a minute. We talked about the Kabbalistic idea of or panimi, the divine light that gets internalized, the line. There's also a circular divine light. That's called makif. It means surrounds. Mem, kuf, yud, final fe. Like hakafot on Simchat Torah, when you go around and around, right? So it's circular light. It surrounds. And that is...
Like a light or magnetic field.
Yes. It's like an aura. Yeah. And that is the light of the mitzvot. The Torah is internalized, but the mitzvot are like our aura. They're our garment surrounding us. And they are, on one hand, they're not internalized, so maybe they're inferior, but no. On the other hand, they're so abstract and divine that they exist in a more abstract form around us, and they surround us.
Does that involve protection? The way one uses light
Aura, right?
in auras with working in either something like yoga, crystals, mindfulness, meditation, all of that, a concept of an aura.
I think so.
It sounds like it.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's a protection, but because we have this magnetic field around us, the more you are in gratitude or doing mitzvah or anything thankful, you expand in this field. And then, like you say in the first class about how the world is vibrating through love or fear. So when we are in love vibration, we being able to manifest more, to be in a more positive way to get what we want, and for life to be better.
And I think it comes, thank you.
That's so
from,
beautiful.
like if you ever read Joe Dispenza book, he talk about this magnetic field. So when we are in fear vibration, if you are in hate, revenge, all these low vibrational feelings, then your magnetic field is just reducing. So it's harder for you to be in a positive way or to manifest things in life, and you're more in a blame shift mentality, victimizing mentality. But when you expand in it, everything becoming better, and that's why he say you can create your own reality by the way you see the light and expanding yourself with doing good, with gratitude, with sport, anything that has to do with this.
And that's why we talked about last week with the love and the fear. Love is this wells up and it's an expanding feeling in our heart, and it's inside out. And fear is that outside in. You said you minimize, right? Because you're going inside of yourself, you're limiting. We also stay tuned because we also talk about the beauty of fear. Everything is like there's advantages of everything. There's advantages of love, advantages of fear. There's advantages of mitzvot, there's advantages of Torah. There's advantages of the internalizing light, there's advantages of the surrounding light. And
Because
it's
we're all one.
exactly.
All one. The
And
energy is
at the end of the
Hashem.
day, it's all Hashem. But what the beauty of having different aspects of different ways that we can appreciate it and different, because as human beings, no, we are not Hashem. So we are composite of a lot of conflicting emotions, right? So as we go through the interesting life that we go through, which isn't simple, and we have our seasons and we have our moods and we have our changes and modes and phases, that's how we can relate to the different aspects of our human experience and connect to God in that way, and connect to God in that way, right? So it really does all come back, though, like you said, and like you said.
I think it's the same way that you say like God is infinite and it's hard for us to comprehend how big it is. I think so when you say we all one, it's under the same thing.
Exactly.
Like it's so hard to understand that we are all one, like one consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
As you said, it's almost intimidating.
Yes.
And that's where the fear comes. That's
Yeah.
the awe, right? It's awesome.
Yeah, and it's like I said, so it's not like it's negative to feel the intimidation. It's
Exactly.
part of the experience. It's part of what makes it so rich, right? At the same time, there's also comfort in that. Like I'm sitting with you and I feel the energy, the magnetic field that connects us, and I can almost visualize it like this linking, right? And it doesn't feel fearful at all. It feels comforting. So there's so much depth, and it makes it interesting, right? Yeah. So that is so basically concluding the chapter with Torah being the internalizer, but also still an action, which then is still a garment, that is still a way we can connect to Hashem with something that is a little beyond us, that surrounding light, that is more than we can internalize, maybe just outside of us, but yet surrounding us. And we talked about the clothing in the chapter 4 as being not us, but yet takes our form and therefore expresses and limits. Because when you and this is a bit of a review for chapter 4, that when we explain a thought we're having, we are explaining our thought, therefore expressing the thought, but the thought is more than the words we can use to explain it, right? So it limits and expresses. And that's what our clothing does. It conceals our bodies, yet expresses our bodies. So that's the beauty of the garment, and then there's also the beauty of the food. And the internalizing, let's not forget, is actually sustenance. It's actually food for our soul. And that is why when we study Torah, you, I'm sure, have experienced this, we feel spiritually energized because we are literally feeding our soul.
Can you just go back to the garment from last? I apologize,
Yeah.
I wasn't here.
Yeah, please.
Obviously, it's explaining the thought you said as well as
Yes,
not
sure.
really able to get
Yes.
the words out.
So we talked about the garment, right? Let's talk about it as just physical clothing. When we wear clothing, we can wear, the clothing is not one with me. I am not my clothing, right? So I can change my clothing. I can wear something more flattering or less flattering. I can put on nice clothes or rags, right? So the clothing is our thought, speech, and action. That's how we express ourselves. That's how we express our soul. So we can express ourselves, and actually this is a little bit of a foreshadow for chapter 6. Chapter 6, which is next week, we're going to talk about the garments of our natural soul. What does that look like? And then we have the garments for our godly soul, which are the mitzvot, And when we talked about the way they express, the same way that clothing cover our bodies, yet express our bodies. They can be flattering. They can take on the shape of our bodies and show its most flattering, in the most flattering way, right? So when we express ourselves through an action or a word or even a thought, as thought is very private but still an expression, right? Then, and I'm, like I said before, let's say we're expressing our thought through speech. This is what I was saying, I'll repeat it. The speech, the way we express our thought, it shares the thought, so it's freeing it, right, to connect with others, yet it limits it to the words we use to describe it. Whereas the idea is more than just the words we use to describe it. Sometimes it's hard to put our ideas into words sometimes. Yet we do it because there's a value in connecting with others. There's a value in expressing ourselves. Otherwise, we're locked, right? So it's, even though the words like limit the idea, it still gives it voice. And so it's both. The clothing express and conceal. Does that make sense now?
The word that comes to mind is nourish the soul.
Yeah, that is a good word.
Like what's good for you.
Oh, I love it.
Like these sessions have been amazing. I just hope they continue.
Oh, that's the
I
plan.
love our group
So
and I
glad.
love our energy. I love our teacher.
I'm grateful to all of you. I really deeply, deeply am, because I feel nourished by our sessions, and I think every single one of us has a light to add. And when each one of you comes, it's like we get more light. So keep listening to the recordings, but also keep coming.
And for those of us that can't physically always be here,
Yes.
can I just suggest that maybe we continue, and the people who are listening to the recordings, maybe there's a time where, if it's feasible, we could actually Zoom in or whatever, not necessarily participate, but just so you can feel the ripples of energy from the people that are just listening to the recordings. Because otherwise,
I would love
you
that.
don't know, we're listening to it in isolation away.
Let's be creative and brainstorm some ideas.
Yeah, whatever works for everybody.
So if we're ready to, I'd love to finish with a meditation. Okay, so let's close our eyes. And let's begin to breathe. Breathing in, breathing out. Now feel your breath entering every part of your body. Your chest. Feel the expansion. Feel the breath letting go. Your stomach. Invite the breath to enter and exit. Feel the breath enter your arms. Feel the breath enter your legs. Keep breathing and feeling the breath enter every part of your body, nourishing it with the breath. As we nourish our body with the breath, let's invite a Torah verse to nourish our soul. This is a Torah verse we teach young children because Torah is there for you as you are today and as you were as a child. And it will always be there for you as food to nourish your soul. As spiritual nourishment to take in Hashem's infinity, distilled into holy Hebrew words. The words are Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. The Torah which Moshe commanded us is Hashem's wisdom. It is the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. Let's invite these words to enter ourselves, fuse with our core, give it nourishment. Feel the words of the Torah, Hashem's divine light, filling your soul. Giving it the energy that it craves, the connection. Now, I invite you to join me in surrounding ourselves with the light of the Torah. By clothing our souls with these words, by reciting these words out loud. You can repeat after me, word by word. Torah,
Torah,
Tziva,
Siva,
Lanu,
Manu,
Moshe,
Moshe,
Morasha,
Moshe,
Kehilat,
Kehilat,
Yaakov.
Yaakov.
Invite the breath of these words to surround you, envelop you, as well as live deep within you in perfect unity with Hashem. Within and without. You're welcome to open your eyes when you're ready. Any thoughts, feelings, impressions?
It's amazing how the mind is able to really visualize and create. I hear your words and I could see the Torah, I could see the words, even though I don't know how to write them. But I could still feel them surrounding me. And it was really, I felt very supported.
Thank you. Within and without. That's what it did for me. Just like floating within, but also having it inside. Yeah.
What brought me a lot of strength was the knowledge that this has worked for so many thousands of years. That's the sort of questioning brain that I have, the analytical lawyer saying, well, is it really so? That chattering monkey. But the other side saying, it's stood the test of time, and we're still uttering the same words.
And that chatter that you describe is a very Jewish thing. because that is the critical thinking that we have that makes the knowing that we have of God so valuable. Is that it's not obvious. And we have the critical thinking to analyze and to question, right? That's asking questions is the most Jewish thing there is.
It's true, because when you think of many other religions, not so much the Eastern, but because I don't know that much about them, but you can't question. In fact, it's almost a God forbid you should put your hand up and dare to say, why are we doing this? Or what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very Jewish thing.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I look forward to next week.